My name is Ethan, and this happened during the summer after my freshman year of college. I had taken a temporary job as a night caretaker at an old boarding school in rural Pennsylvania. The school had been closed for renovations after a pipe burst during winter. Since most of the students were gone, they only needed someone to patrol the property at night and report anything suspicious. The pay was surprisingly good. The problem was that nobody wanted the job. I didn't understand why until my third night. The campus sat alone on a hill surrounded by thick woods. During the day it looked beautiful. At night it felt abandoned by the world. My shift started at 10 p.m. Every hour I had to walk through the main building, check the gymnasium, inspect the dormitories, and then return to the security office. The first 2 nights were boring. The third night was different. At around 1:15 a.m. I was checking the east dormitory when I heard footsteps above me. That was impossible. The entire building was locked. I stopped and listened. Footstep, footstep, footstep. Slow, heavy, directly above my head. I radioed the maintenance supervisor. No answer. I tried again. Nothing. The footsteps stopped. For a moment everything became silent. Then I heard a loud bang. Something had fallen upstairs. My stomach tightened. I grabbed my flashlight and headed toward the staircase. The second-floor hallway stretched endlessly in front of me. Room after room, door after door, every single one closed. I checked each room carefully. Nothing. No broken windows. No intruders. No animals. As I turned around to leave, I noticed a door standing slightly open at the far end of the hallway. I was sure it had been closed earlier. The room number was 214. I walked toward it. The closer I got, the colder the hallway felt. My flashlight flickered. I pushed the door open. The room was empty, except for a wooden chair positioned in the middle of the floor, facing the wall. That was strange because all furniture had been removed during renovations. I stepped closer. Something was carved into the wall. Help me. The letters looked old, very old, almost like someone had scratched them with a nail. A loud slam echoed behind me. I spun around. The door had shut itself. I rushed over and yanked it open. The hallway was empty, but now I could hear footsteps again. Running, not walking, running, toward me. I pointed my flashlight down the hallway. Nothing. The sound grew louder, closer, closer. Then suddenly it stopped. Right in front of me. I couldn't see anyone, but I knew something was there. I felt it. The air itself felt wrong. I backed away slowly. Then my flashlight beam landed on the dusty floor. Footprints. Fresh footprints, appearing one by one, as if someone invisible was walking toward me. I ran. I didn't care how ridiculous it sounded. I sprinted all the way back to the security office. The supervisor finally answered the radio. When I told him what happened, there was a long pause. Then he asked one question. Was it room 214? My blood ran cold. I asked how he knew. Another pause. Then he told me a story. Years ago, a student named Daniel lived in that room. One night he disappeared. No signs of forced entry. No evidence. Nothing. His parents spent years searching for answers. They never found him. Officially he was classified as a missing person. Unofficially, students claimed strange things started happening after his disappearance. Footsteps, voices, doors opening, messages appearing on walls, always around room 214. The supervisor laughed nervously and said it was probably just a campus legend. I wanted to believe him. Then I looked at the security monitor. Room 214 had a camera. The screen showed the empty room. The chair still sat in the center, but now someone was sitting in it. A thin figure wearing a student uniform, facing the wall. The camera quality was terrible. I couldn't see the face. The supervisor looked at the screen. His face turned pale. Then the figure slowly stood up. The screen went black. The next morning, maintenance workers checked the room. The chair was gone. There were no footprints, no carvings, nothing. It was as if the room had never been touched. I quit 2 nights later. The school reopened 6 months afterward. A year later I searched online and found something disturbing. A current student had posted a photo from the East Dormitory. In the background was room 214. The door was slightly open. Inside stood a wooden chair facing the wall, exactly where I had seen it. My name is Ryan. 3 years ago I drove across Ohio to attend a friend's wedding. The drive should have taken 6 hours. Instead, it became the most terrifying night of my life. It was around midnight when I stopped at a gas station near exit 9. The station looked old. Only one pump worked. The parking lot was empty except for a black SUV. While filling my tank, I noticed a girl standing near the edge of the property. She looked about 20 years old. Long dark hair, white hoodie, barefoot. She seemed lost. I asked if she needed help. She didn't answer immediately. Then she quietly asked if I could give her a ride. Normally I would have refused, but she looked scared. I asked where she was going. She pointed down the highway, just a few miles. Against my better judgment, I agreed. She climbed into the back seat. The moment she shut the door, I noticed something strange. She never looked directly at me, not once. We drove in silence. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Eventually I asked where I should drop her off. No answer. I checked the rearview mirror. She was staring out the window, completely motionless. I repeated the question. Slowly she raised her head. Then she said something that made no sense. "Don't stop if you see him." I laughed nervously. "See who?" She didn't respond. The highway became increasingly isolated. No houses, no traffic, no lights, just darkness. Then I noticed headlights behind us. A black SUV, the same one from the gas station. My stomach tightened. The SUV stayed several car lengths behind, never passing, never falling back, just following. The girl suddenly spoke. "He's still here." I asked who. She ignored me. A few minutes later the SUV accelerated. Fast, very fast. It pulled alongside my vehicle. The driver turned his head toward me. I couldn't see his face, only darkness. Then he pointed at the girl. My heart pounded. The SUV dropped behind us again. I grabbed my phone. No signal. The girl started crying, quietly at first, then uncontrollably. I asked what was happening. She whispered one sentence. "He found me again." I exited the highway at the next town. The SUV followed. Every turn I made, it copied. I spotted a police station sign and headed toward it. The SUV accelerated suddenly. Its headlights flooded my mirrors. The vehicle slammed into my rear bumper. My car swerved. I barely maintained control. The girl screamed. The SUV hit us again, harder. I finally reached the police station parking lot. The SUV immediately sped away. I jumped out and ran inside. Officers came outside with me. The back seat was empty. The girl was gone. I searched everywhere. Nothing. The officers assumed she fled while I was distracted. I told them about the SUV. They reviewed nearby cameras. Hours later one officer returned with a strange expression. He asked me where I picked up the girl. I told him. Exit 9. The old gas station. The officer looked uneasy. Then he showed me a photograph. It was the girl. The exact same girl. Same face. Same hair. Same hoodie. The photo was from a missing persons file, dated 1998. She had vanished after leaving that gas station. Her body was discovered 2 weeks later in the woods. The primary suspect owned a black SUV, but police never had enough evidence to arrest him. I stared at the photograph. My hands were shaking. I asked how this was possible. The officer had no answer. Neither do I. A year later I drove past exit 9 again. The gas station had been demolished. Only the cracked foundation remained. As I passed, I glanced toward the roadside. Standing in the weeds was a girl wearing a white hoodie, watching traffic, waiting for another ride. The last bus of summer. My name is Tyler, and this happened during the summer after my sophomore year of college. I grew up in a small town in northern Michigan. It was the kind of place where everybody knew everyone else's business. Nothing exciting ever happened there. People worked, went fishing, complained about the weather, and repeated the same stories for decades. Every summer, college students returned home, and for a few months it felt like high school all over again. 3 years ago, I got a job working the closing shift at a grocery store. The job wasn't difficult. The only problem was transportation. My car had broken down, so every night I took the last bus home. The route wasn't popular. Most nights I was the only passenger. The driver was an older man named Frank. Frank had been driving that route for years. He was friendly but quiet. One night in late August, something strange happened. I finished work around 11:30 p.m. and walked to the bus stop. The parking lot was almost empty. The bus arrived exactly on time. I climbed aboard. Frank nodded. "Just you tonight." I sat near the back and put my headphones on. About 10 minutes into the ride, The bus stopped at a station that normally had no passengers at that hour. The doors opened. A woman stepped aboard. She looked to be in her late 20s. Long dark hair, gray coat, no luggage, no purse, nothing. She sat near the middle of the bus. I remember thinking that she looked strangely pale. The bus continued. A few minutes later I noticed something odd. She hadn't moved at all, not even slightly. No looking out the window, no checking a phone, nothing. She simply stared straight ahead. The ride continued. At the next stop nobody got on, nobody got off. The woman remained motionless. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Something about her started bothering me. Every now and then I glanced forward. She never changed position, never blinked, never moved. Finally I stood up and walked toward the front. As I passed her seat, I looked at her face. My stomach tightened. Her eyes were open, very wide, but they seemed unfocused, almost empty, like she was staring through everything. I quickly looked away and sat back down. Maybe she was exhausted. Maybe she was sick. I tried convincing myself there was a logical explanation. Then the bus stopped again. The doors opened. The woman didn't move. The doors closed. The bus continued. Frank suddenly looked into the rearview mirror. His expression changed. He looked directly at me. Then he motioned for me to come forward. I walked toward him. Without taking his eyes off the road, he asked quietly, "When did she get on?" I turned around. The woman was still sitting there. "About half an hour ago." Frank's face turned pale. "What stop?" I told him. His hands tightened on the wheel. "That's impossible." I asked what he meant. For several seconds he didn't answer. Then he pointed ahead. "You see that road?" I nodded. "It leads to an old bridge." "So?" Frank swallowed hard. "A woman died there years ago." I laughed nervously. "What does that have to do with anything?" Frank didn't laugh. "Every August somebody claims they see her." I stared at him. He continued driving. "The descriptions are always the same. Gray coat, dark hair, late 20s, travels alone, gets on the last bus, never speaks, never moves." I told him that wasn't funny. Frank agreed. "It isn't." The bus suddenly hit a pothole. The entire vehicle shook. I looked back. The woman hadn't moved at all, not even from the impact. That was the moment I started feeling afraid. We approached another stop. The bus slowed. The doors opened. Nobody was there. The woman slowly stood up. For the first time, the movement was so sudden and unnatural that it startled me. She walked toward the front. Her feet made no sound, not even on the bus floor. She stopped beside Frank. Neither of them spoke. Then she stepped off the bus. The doors closed. Frank immediately accelerated, far faster than normal. I looked through the rear window. The woman stood alone beneath the streetlight, watching the bus leave. I couldn't explain why, but seeing her standing there filled me with dread. Frank didn't speak again for the rest of the trip. When we reached my stop, I got off. Before the doors closed, I asked him something. "Have you seen her before?" Frank stared ahead, then quietly answered, "3 times." The bus drove away. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day curiosity got the better of me. I searched local newspaper archives. Eventually I found something. In 1997 a woman named Rebecca Morgan died after her car crashed near an old bridge. Witnesses claimed she had been trying to flag down vehicles before the accident. Several drivers later reported seeing a woman matching her description walking along roads at night. Most people dismissed it as local folklore. I almost did too, until a week later. I was closing the store again. Business had been slow. Around 11 p.m. a customer entered. A woman, gray coat, dark hair. My blood froze. She looked exactly like the woman from the bus. I watched her carefully. She wandered through the store, never picking up any items, never looking at products, just walking. Eventually she approached my register. I forced myself to smile. "Did you find everything okay?" She stared at me. No response. Then she asked a question. A simple question. "Has the last bus left yet?" Her voice sounded distant, almost hollow. I told her not yet. She nodded, then walked away. Without buying anything, I hurried after her. But by the time I reached the entrance she was gone. The parking lot was empty. No cars, no people, nothing. That night I almost skipped the bus. But I needed to get home. The bus arrived. I climbed aboard. Frank immediately noticed my expression. I told him what happened. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely frightened. The ride began. Neither of us spoke much. About 20 minutes later the bus approached the same stop where the woman had appeared before. The doors opened. Nobody got on. The bus remained still. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Then Frank quietly said, "Look." I followed his gaze. Standing beneath the streetlight was the woman. Gray coat, dark hair, watching us. The doors remained open. She didn't move. Frank suddenly slammed them shut. The bus pulled away. Neither of us looked back. The next stop was mine. As I stepped off, Frank grabbed my arm. "Don't take this route tomorrow." I asked why. His answer made my stomach drop. "Because tomorrow is the anniversary." The next day I ignored his advice. Not because I was brave, because I thought the whole thing was ridiculous. Ghost stories, urban legends, coincidences, that's all. My shift ended. Midnight arrived. I headed for the bus stop. Rain was falling heavily. The streets were empty. The bus was late. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Finally headlights appeared. The bus pulled up. Something immediately felt wrong. Frank wasn't driving. A younger driver sat behind the wheel. I asked where Frank was. The driver looked confused. "Frank, the usual driver." The man's expression changed. "Oh." Then he looked away. "What happened?" The driver hesitated. "He didn't show up tonight." That was unlike Frank. Very unlike Frank. I boarded anyway. The ride felt wrong from the start. The bus was completely empty. Just me. Rain hammered against the windows. The farther we traveled, the worse the weather became. Eventually we approached the familiar stop. The one where the woman appeared. The bus slowed. The doors opened. The woman stepped aboard. Exactly as before. Gray coat, dark hair, expressionless face. She sat in the same seat. The new driver didn't react. Apparently he couldn't see anything unusual. I stared at her the entire ride. For the first time, she turned her head, and looked directly at me. Her eyes were empty. Not angry, not sad, just empty. Then she smiled. A horrible smile. Not because it looked threatening, because it looked desperate, like someone begging for help. The bus continued. Then suddenly the woman stood. She walked toward me. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. She stopped beside my seat, then whispered something. Just 3 words. "He's still here." The exact same sentence. Then she pointed toward the back of the bus. I turned. Nobody was there. When I looked back, she was gone. Completely gone. I jumped from my seat. The driver asked what was wrong. I couldn't answer. I hurried off at the next stop and walked the rest of the way home. The following morning local news reported a discovery. Construction crews near the old bridge had uncovered human remains. The remains belonged to a man connected to Rebecca Morgan's case, the primary suspect. The man police believed had followed her the night she died. He had disappeared shortly after her death. Nobody knew what happened to him. Until then, I never saw the woman again. But every August I think about that bus. About Frank. About the strange smile. And about those final words. Because she wasn't warning me. She was warning everyone. The thing that truly bothers me is this. Frank eventually returned to work a week later. When I asked where he'd been on the anniversary night, he became very quiet. Then he said something I'll never forget. Some passengers aren't meant to arrive at their destination. I laughed and asked what that meant. Frank looked out the window, then softly replied, "I almost didn't." And he never explained further. 2 years later Frank retired. 6 months after that, he passed away from natural causes. The bus route was eventually discontinued due to low ridership. Today the stop where the woman always appeared no longer exists. The shelter was removed. The road was redesigned. Most people have forgotten all about the story, but occasionally, local social media groups still post strange reports. Usually around late August. Usually near midnight. People claim they see a woman in a gray coat standing beneath a streetlight that no longer exists, waiting for a bus that no longer runs. And according to those reports, if the weather is bad enough and the road is empty enough, she sometimes asks a single question. Has the last bus left yet?